Hello, good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain. So,
good morning. I'm Nelta Igbe.
It's the day before, and it's November 10 today. It's a Friday morning. Welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Yeah, so tomorrow will be the day where elections will hold in Bayelsa, Kogi, and Dimo states. And of course, you know that there's been several incidents build up to all of this, but many are holding on to the words of the NSA, the IGP, the Inspector General of Police, and INEC themselves, who all have said these elections, there'll be no interference, it'll be peaceful. So if you've got any intention whatsoever of fomenting trouble, perish the thought, just leave for your own good. So all of those states, there'll be a lot of spotlight in those states to ensure that things go right. We'll be looking to see how that plays out.
Well, it's up to, as we always say, it's up to the electorate to go out there and decide which way the pendulum will swing.
But the figures are not encouraging. Confidence is tanked with the electorate. The data is really low.
Chamberlain, between you and I mean, coming from INEC's data, over 5 million voters are supposed to vote in these elections. If I get my figures correct, over 5 million. Now, whether those 5 million are going to come out to vote is another kettle of fish altogether. But whatever happens, my advice will be to all those who are going out there, for whatever it is, which is for one reason only, vote and monitor your vote. See that your vote is counted. Please stay safe, be careful. But the other side also, there's something that we always talk about, the office of the citizens, citizens policing, citizens watch. Everybody, if everybody decides, in fact, someone actually put out an analogy one time, it was in 2011, before that 2011 election, he said, imagine where everybody just decides that for this election, all of us are not going to come out. Let's boycott the elections. I know that would be a tough call, but he just put out there and say, imagine that if people could decide that, okay, today, you know what, we're going to boycott this. Let's all decide that today we're all going to sit down and watch this election and see that it is what it's supposed to be. We'll come out, we will vote, and nobody is going to stop our votes from being counted whatsoever. I think that is possible. So citizens watch. Everybody together, it's an election that we've all decided that we're going to go for. We're going to come out and vote. The politicians want to do whatever they want to do, but see, politicians come out to you and tell you, give me this, give me that, give me this, I will do this, I will do that. But most often than not, they don't do what they say they will do. But they expect you to do what you said you would do when you said you'll come out and vote for them. So, hey, stay safe.
Speaking about politicians, they've done something. When the president appointed those 10 members of resident electoral commissioners and the Senate cleared them, some of them have been seen to be to have identified with political parties. And so some of these names here have been found, at least by a lot of groups. There you go. So, well, they weighted on the scale and found them.
You see, when sometimes your affiliations will matter. Now, some will say, no, it does not matter. It doesn't matter whom you're affiliated with. When you're given the task, you focus on the task. But he who comes to equity must come with clean hands. If you're going to come out here and say, I want to be an umpire, you must need to be seen to be unbiased in whatever way. And in selecting these people for this appointment, I don't know what the president's thoughts were or what his handlers were thinking in selecting these guys who are in one way or the other tainted or affiliated with one group or with one party or the other, which shouldn't be. I mean, you're the electoral umpire. You are supposed to be seen to be unbiased.
For instance, Mr. Abubakar Dambo, who was the former Commissioner for Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs in Zamfara State, and then I think they said it was on that same day that they were being confirmed that he was seen here with the former governor of Zamfara State, now the Ministry of Defense. And so many wonder. So,
at least, if you look at Mr. Dambo, he wasn't, I mean, he's not been seen wearing any party-affiliated outfit. I mean, we've not seen a picture. Maybe there is one. But speak of the one from Akwa Ibom who was seen wearing a party's outfit.
No, you don't have to be even seen wearing anything.
No, that's what I'm saying. I mean, the fact that you're even, if there are pictures of you like that.
If you're a member of the party.
If you're a member of the party, and then it's, there are no words, but it's not right. It's not supposed to be. It shouldn't be.
So these are some of the things that people see, and then when you wonder why the confidence has tanked, why several people think, look, what can possibly come off this one? If certain loyalists or political parties are at the helm of affairs, and you expect them to do otherwise for their principles, they'll be beholden to their principles, and they'll do what they can to ensure that their principles, the pendulum swings their way at the end of the day. So, and if they, quote unquote, have captured institutions which are supposed to be for the people, it's clear to everyone what the outcome will be.
Well, the fact that a number of institutions of government have made one comment or the other. The DSS has spoken about these elections and warned politicians, excuse me, on their comments about the elections, that they're warning them not to make acerbic pronouncements, all in the interest of the nation. And of course, as you have mentioned, a host of other civil society organizations have spoken. But to the last issue that you mentioned about the resident electoral commissioners that have been confirmed by the National Assembly, the first question that I would want to ask is, have they been sworn in by INEC? If they have not been sworn in, then there is still something to be done by the president. If they have been sworn in, then we have put a nail on the coffin of, what Neta was talking about the other time, equity and clean hands. I'm looking at the 15th session of the third schedule of the Constitution, Part 1, and it says, it lists the functions of the National Electoral Commission, Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, lists all of them, and subsection H says, the Commission shall have power to delegate any of its powers to any resident electoral commissioner, and that's very, very specific. In fact, in G, it says, the Commission shall ensure that all electoral commissioners, electoral and returning officers take and subscribe to the oath of office prescribed by law. Then it says, it shall also delegate any of its powers to any resident electoral commissioner. I ask again, what are the functions of the resident electoral commissioner? What powers of the INEC are delegated to a resident electoral commissioner? Again, let's not forget that the resident electoral commissioner is set, according to this part of the Constitution, not a member of INEC. So does that mean that they cannot, that whoever is there can be a member of a political party? Exactly where are they going to hide? Is anyone going to hide to justify what very many people are complaining about in terms of these people that are said to be partisan? The silence from the presidency, the silence from the Senate, or whatever comments, unwelcome comments that have come from the Senate, and the silence from INEC. These are questionable silences from these two very important institutions. What is INEC saying? Well, maybe I don't know, maybe I have not heard it, but people need to know. Well, the most that we have heard from INEC is that they have not resumed office because some of the people that they're supposed to replace are still in active service. Fine, but does that mean that as soon as those ones exit, these guys just ease in? Have they been sworn in by INEC? Are they on INEC's reserve list? Nigerians need to know, so we know whether or not to go out and vote. Because, as you said, Nyota, the question arises as to whether or not people even trust the system. Gradually, increasingly, you have seen the trust quotient reduce over time. This kind of action is definitely not going to help that trust increase. Or will it? Chamberlain.
Well, we'll see. So tomorrow will be the big day. So let's go ahead and take you through how some of the dailies are reflecting all of that here today. We'll start with Vanguard newspaper. Off-cycle Guba elections is their theme here. DHQ, that's Defense Headquarters, DSS, IGP, read Riot Act as Imo, Bayelsa, Kogi polls hold tomorrow. Look at the riders now. We'll deal with those planning to disguise in military gear to cause violence. Ascribed to DHQ. Shun inflammatory statements or face our wrath. DSS warns. But of course, many are looking to see if they can cite any statements whatsoever, any reportage concerning the deputy governorship candidate of the APC in Bayelsa State, whose image video circulated all over the place with those what they consider inflammatory statements, inciting statements. So who knows if that's been done in light of this statement you hear from the DSS. And then the next of the rider here says, IGP orders postings, redeployment of 14 AIGs, 26 CPs. Southeast monarchs, bishops sue for peace. So the conduct of policemen, the conduct of security, the army, all of them will be under the spotlight here today, tomorrow. So they all have got to behave themselves. Well, they know that no group or no politician is allowed to move with a retinue of people because you're supposed to just go there and vote. Security should know that they cannot be seen providing cover or assistance or accompanying officials to go cast their votes. But will that happen? I guess, anyway, there are cameras all over the place. We'll keep tabs on that to see. And above this lead story here, oh yeah, but you get to see the image of Tinubu in Riyadh there. And so hopefully things look up. We'll get benefits of this visit, economic benefits as a matter of fact. And then you see Rivers political crisis. Wike remains my Oga, ascribed to Governor Fubara. Appeal court judgment, more protests rock Plateau. If you've been following, you see that. Ex-Labour leader Kokoro is struggling for life in Delta Hospital. So, not of equal concern. That's Vanguard today.
Well, Daily Trust is what I have here, and it's still staying with the elections for tomorrow. So it's 24 hours to polls. Igala elders call for postponement. Women protest in Bayelsa. That's what they're leading with. And the riders, travelers miss flight as Labour grounds Imo-bound planes. IGP storms Kogi. Military raises alarm on fake soldiers. How did we get to this point where we're having fake soldiers, fake security agents all over the place? I mean, there was a time when you couldn't find, that's proliferation of too much of camouflage up and down.
But we've seen several reports for years how bandits are usually adorned in military fatigue.
Did
And
they
then
get
they
the
attack people.
fatigues?
That's why when they're seen that way and then people drop their guard, little do you know terrorists. I'm sure they see them walking openly in some parts of the country. So that's been on for a while.
I mean, the military might need to come out and educate Nigerians on how to identify, indeed, really identify the fake from the real. Labour action inconsiderate, not treasonable. Yadudu speaking. Protests won't hamper Saturday elections. INEC is speaking there. Go to page 4. You see more on that story, but you see the pictures there of the protest and the different protests in NLC and the women in Bayelsa. Some of the captions, President Tinubu, Bayelsa CP is biased. That's what the women are saying in Bayelsa. But those pictures, below those pictures, you find this one. DSS reads Riot Act to troublemakers. It's on page 10. And just below the nameplate explosion, Canada says visa centers in Abuja, Lagos, remain open, as despite that fire incident that happened a couple of days ago. And that's it from the Daily Trust.
Look at the front page of this Nigeria newspaper, and what do you have there? The final showdown. That's the lead of this Nigeria. Diri, Silva, Uzodinma, Ododo, Melaye, Anyao, others slug it out tomorrow in fierce Gilbert race. Security agencies issue stern guidelines. IPC call for safety protection for reporters. And I queue behind that one in particular, guys. Stories you'll find on pages 4 and 13 of the paper. Now, to the issue there's something right here, right under that story beside the picture. Sack appointee who ignores NAS invitations. Akpabio tells Tinubu, how about the ones Nigerians are complaining about, dear President of the Senate? That story is on page 16 of the paper today. Insufficient legislative drafters affecting lawmaking in Nigeria, says Sulaiman, who is NIL's DG. Well, most certainly something concerning. Of course, the NLC story is right there. Labour disrupts flights to Owerri from Abuja, Lagos airports. Keyamo cautions NLC TUC against politicizing protest. And JRO pursuing LP interest in Imo, says Uzodinma. Find the details of that on pages 5 and 13. That's this Nigeria newspaper this morning.
Leadership says as polls holds tomorrow, 5.1 million voters decide Kogi, Imo, Bayelsa's future. INEC distributes non-sensitive materials. Military, state security warn troublemakers to steer clear. Police chief deploys DIGs, bans sirens, revolving lights, covered number plates, tinted glasses. And then FRSC sends 1,500 personnel. So that's what you get to see on the front page of Leadership here today. So, and then there's a tab in front of that paper where they just break down some of the issues that you should know here. So for the Kogi, Imo, and Bayelsa. Now, for Kogi State, the total number of registered voters here is 1,932,654 for Kogi State. And then for Imo State, that's 2,419,922. And then for Bayelsa, you got 1,056,862. And see the paper. What's going on, guys? That's Leadership Friday here this morning. So that, so it's all about the breakdown of the figures and those elections. And then now, the polling units that have got no voters here, Kogi, none of them, they all have that. But in Imo, you have 38 polling units with no voters. But in Bayelsa, 2. Yeah, that's, well, there was no registration there. For one reason or the other, that didn't happen. So, and then one of the key factors here too is the number of permanent voter cards that were collected. So in Kogi, you've got 1,833,160. And in Imo, you've got 2,318,919. And in Bayelsa, 1,017,613. So you have all of that here on the front page. Okay, well, that's what I can say. Let me leave it then. That's Leadership Friday today.
New Telegraph is what I have here, and they staying with the elections tomorrow. Saturday, Guba, ICPC deploys operatives to prevent vote buying. All hands on deck, you might say. Go to page 3, 4, 9, 10, and 11 to get more details. We'll see the riders as former foes, allies battle for Bayelsa, Imo, Kogi top seats. Uzodinma Diri seeks second term. Kogi voters elect new governor. Military, DSS, police, NSCDC strengthen security, vow to deal with troublemakers. And this one, perish any plan of rigging. Who's telling who? Go to the page 3, 4, 9, 10 and 11 to find out more. Below that, you see a picture of what's going on in Saudi Arabia at the moment. But below that, Ajero, Labour takes protests to Abuja Airport Police Headquarters, page 2 and 5. Advises Nigerians to stock up food essentials ahead of wide strike. Targeting aviation for NLC TUC protest wrong, coming from the president, from the federal government. But see this one, 14.38 trillion naira remitted to Federation account in 2 years. That's coming from the Nigeria Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, NATI. Go to page 26 to see the breakdown of that. But see a bit of it, 5.42 trillion naira disbursed to federal, states, and local government. Mineral revenue contributed 6.4 trillion naira, non-mineral 4.8 trillion naira. Nigeria is indeed blessed. But how is Nigeria managing her blessedness? Above the nameplate, IMF, China's slowing economy will hit Nigeria's GDP growth. Go to page 3 for more details on that. And that's it from New Telegraph.
The Guardian newspaper this morning, and what you will find, well, it's a big story. And look at it right there on the front page. Renewed hope agenda. Political class at profligate best as citizens languish. The details you'll find right there on pages 4 and 5. But excuse me, look at those highlights. Luxury budget for Nigeria's presidency, and a host of other things you see right there. Renovation of residential quarters for the president in Abuja to go up 4 billion. One for the vice president to go up 2.5 billion. Renovation of Dorden Barracks in Lagos, official residence of the president, to go up 4 billion. The one for the VP in Lagos to go up 3 billion. Construction of office complex in the presidential villa to go up 4 billion. That's just for the presidency. And of course, you see for the president of the Senate and the speaker as well. Also, all in the graphics you see on the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Very, very, you might find it interesting, but that's it right there on the front page of the paper. Right under that picture, you find this one. Importers to pay more as customs revises rate to 783 naira to the dollar amid 70% decline. What does that mean, really? Please find the details on the inside pages this morning. Decision day in Imo, Bayelsa, Kogi. INEC affirms readiness. DHQ uncovers plot to cause mayhem. Now that it's been uncovered, can we bring the culprit to book? The details you'll find on the inside pages of the paper this morning. So many other stories you'll find right there. NATI reveals Federation account received 14.4 trillion naira in 2 years. So where is it? Let's find the details on the inside pages. That's the Guardian newspaper this morning. How about a look at the Daily Independent newspaper? Daily Independent is looking at the same elections. Kogi, Bayelsa, Imo, Gilbert polls, another litmus test for INEC. That's a quote, obviously. Who's saying it? Check the details on page 29. The writers, stakeholders see voter apathy, doubts INEC assurances. We won't allow anybody manipulate electoral process. That's according to the PDP. Please declare 5 Bayelsa council areas violence prone. And then the military warns troublemakers of injurious consequences. That story you'll find on page 29. Well, at the bottom of the page, you'll find beside that picture, Russia-Ukraine crisis takes toll on Nigeria's crude. According to the NNPC, says it affects inflow into international markets. That story it continues on the inside pages. FG declares state of emergency on humanitarian crisis in Benue. Stories on page 6. Please find out what the details are on the inside pages of the paper today. That's the Daily Independent this morning, and a look at some of the dailies. We're back right after now to begin that conversation, previewing the elections tomorrow. Please stay with us.
All right, so lots of people wondering what will play out tomorrow. So build up, yes, the figures of those who will vote, security, INEC, all eyes will be on all of them. So we've got Dr. Jackson Tamonosaki here with us. He is CDD's Election Analysis Center. Good morning, and thank you for coming on today. And then Samson Itodo joins us virtually. He's the Executive Director from Yiaga. He joins us from Oxford. So we'll get to see that as well. So, okay, so your analysis center has been active, I reckon. So what kind of stats takes out from your center, notwithstanding the build-up to it?
Yeah, the CDD Analysis Center has been focused on the off-cycle elections, and we work with the presidential general elections that was held in February. For the Analysis Center, some of the factors that played out during the general elections, we foresee these factors to also influence the outcomes of the off-cycle elections, if not dead. For instance, one of the key issues that we've been able to identify is the efforts at delegitimizing the electoral institutions. That is largely coming from the political actors themselves. We can see in Kogi, in Imo State specifically, where key actors across political lines are already accusing the electoral empire bias and even implicating the security agencies, playing along the lines of the ruling political parties in those states. So these kinds of narratives may likely influence the confidence that electorates may have on the electoral umpire. Already going by the outcome of the general elections earlier in February, and we observed reduced turnout of voters. So INEC has a lot of task ahead of it to rejig the confidence that the electorates in these states will need to come out to vote on Saturday.
All right, so now, for instance security, voter participation. Those are some of the key areas. So we've heard the IGP, the NSA, they've all come up and spoken about how these elections will be devoid of any form of interference whatsoever. And usually we see lots of deployment across elections from different states, from different agencies of security agencies. Or for this particular one, coming just after the general elections and the impression people have of this, is that deployment likely going to have any impact whatsoever in terms of whether or not people come out to participate? Or you think that the apathy that people feel pervades will still be dominant in these elections across the 3 states?
Yeah, security is a key concern across the 3 states. Building up to these elections, we've recorded incidents of attacks on political actors in Kogi, in Imo State, and even the rhetorics of the political actors themselves, you know, about threats to life and properties of political actors. So, of course, the average Nigerian would be concerned with his or her own safety.
Yeah, but you know, the thing about that is, even before that last elections, there were threats to people's lives and things like that, but they still came out en masse at that time because they were determined to make a change. So all of those threats notwithstanding, they came through at the time. So the threat may exist in some way for these elections. Does that then mean that, we'll get the same kind of atmosphere, people coming out, notwithstanding what's going on?
Yeah, so that also depends on the peculiarities of each of these states. For instance, in Bayelsa State, which is largely coastal, you know, we over the years issues around militants and non-state actors actively influencing the election outcomes. You know, we see that to also play out. You know,
you think it will have an impact this time?
It happens in almost every election, in not just Bayelsa State, diverse states. So these narratives are really scary, and irrespective of the deployments that the police has made, we learned 3 deputy inspector generals posted to each of the states, and 3 helicopters posted, and so much deployment. That notwithstanding, the character and nature of the political actors, you know, it's key to these narratives. We heard from the military high command just yesterday that there are notifications of hoodlums wanting to impersonate soldiers. You know, so if that is likely to happen, then how can we tell which is authentic military personnel or police personnel or not? When these materials in the open market, anybody can wear a camouflage or a police uniform, you know. So until the security architecture gets to a point where we have a proactive security engagements that are non-kinetic, rather than this usual reactive.
From what we've seen so far, you've talked about the deployment of security for the elections, and there are concerns in certain quarters about the need to even have so much of security in our election space. At what point do you think we'll be able to come out of that?
Yeah, sure. That's a major challenge. Even having the military to man elections, it's ordinarily it's absurd, right? So the police and the civil defense and other security agencies should be able to.
Because the law speaks about the perimeter. Who's supposed to be where? The police within a certain radius and distance. So if the army is on the streets, is that tantamount to manning elections?
Well, in as much as they are on the streets, ordinarily are they supposed to be on the streets? We have the police force. We have the Nigerian police force. We have the civil defense and other parastatals that should ordinarily be able to. But this is as a result of the capacity constraints. And that's why we have the military coming to elections and be in every sphere of our lives. You know, so the issue for me is the kind of politics that political actors play. they see politics to be a do-or-die affair, and I don't see how you would want to put people's life at risk, and you want to kill people, then at the end of the day, who do you want to govern? So they see politics as a do-or-die affair, and that's the drivers of this insecurity.
When you say political actors, is it just about those who are in the forefront, or also about the people, the electorate? They are also political actors.
By political actors, I mean...
That means everybody, including you.
I mean, by political actors, I mean those are the forefront, those contesting for the elections. They are party followers who are ready to cause mayhem, and this cuts across every party.
So how do we come out of that space?
So coming out of that space is until the political environment and the lucrativeness of political positions is watered down, because it seems to be lucrative, right? So people spend millions, hundreds of millions of naira on elections to be in the government house, and that is because, of course, we know how the political class enrich themselves through the states.
Okay, I think we also do have Samson. Who joins us virtually from Oxford. Good morning, Samson. So, yes, Yiaga did release their pre-election data in terms of the, I think you call it pre-election observation report, and you have detailed several these key states. And then you did highlight that there will be heightened activity for secessionist groups, security, particularly this time. But in consideration of the narratives that has come through from the IGP, this time the NSA also saying no interference whatsoever, and the disposition of those men, what kind of impact do you think it will make this time?
Well, thank you, Chamberlain and Nata. I think that the point needs to be made that we expect that the assurances received from the security agencies will make an impact in this election. And what's the impact? First, as we have noted in our pre-election observation report, that there is heightened fear and apprehension in the three states due to the spate of violence, pre-election violence. And this has been further exacerbated with the obnoxious abuse of incumbency powers in those states. And quite frankly, in two states, for instance, in Kogi and Imo, including Bayelsa, these three states, we've also seen a shrinking of the political space and making it difficult, for political parties to campaign. And that, to a large extent, is responsible for this level of apprehension. We've also seen fatalities, and there's not been accountability for the lives that have been lost in the build-up to this election. Whilst I note, and commendably so, that the IG of police in the town hall hosted by Channels did make some commitments, and I actually want to go on record to commend the IG for at least accepting responsibility when he apologized to Grace Jerry, the PWD advocate, when she recounted her experience in the last election. And he gave assurances that this would not reoccur. I think what people want to see moving to tomorrow's elections is that, one, in these volatile local governments and areas in Imo, in Bayelsa, in Kogi, that the security agencies will deploy and to secure INEC officials and the materials to those polling units. Secondly, that the voters will be confident that their security will be guaranteed that they will be protected and shielded from voter intimidation, suppression, and violence. Because as you can see in a place like Imo, where you've seen non-state armed groups, being deployed to unleash mayhem and terror on people. So people are going to be expecting that when they show up to vote in a civil activity like election, which should be a festival of democracy, that the state will guarantee and protect them. So that's the assurances that have been received. And I do hope, giving the security agencies a benefit of doubt, that they will nip this in bud. But quite frankly, is the confidence level high? I will be deceiving myself and deceiving Nigerians that yes, the confidence level is high. Their actions have been taken, but the voters in those states and Nigerians deserve more.
You also recommended, concerning security, that security agencies have got to respond to these early warning signs or indicators of violence. And then the one for Imo, you narrowed down, you listed some key states that they should watch out or look out for. So imagine that these agencies would have done their due diligence, noticing all these flashpoints, because they're the ones who should be on ground. They should have all of this data. When you talk about early warning signs, does that include what? The narratives made by politicians like DSS, invited them, those kind of actions? Are those kind of things we should see? And if we haven't seen them, is it too late for any of such actions to occur?
I actually don't think it's too late. I think that there are confidence-building measures that can be taken, and there are three things that I think that security agencies can do. One, whilst it may be late to mop up all the light arms and small weapons that are in possession of non-state armed groups, I do believe that they can still act within the next 24 hours. Good a thing that campaigns have come to an end. And so they know the hideouts, they know the locations where these people are. And to a very large extent, they also know their sponsors. Can they prevail on their sponsors and arrest them and make it difficult for them to unleash terror in the elections? The second thing is the need for, non-partisanship and professional management of election security operation. And one thing that needs to be reiterated is that tomorrow's election serves as a litmus test, not just for INEC, but also for the executive and the IG of police, because it's the first election following the contentious and controversial 2023 elections. And what Nigerians and the voters in those states want to see is a non-partisan, a non-aligned, and, a neutral security institution that will deploy and manage the security efficiently. What people don't want to see is security agencies providing shield for ballot box snatchers, for thugs who disrupt elections. They also don't want to see security agencies, looking the other way when politicians deploy mercenaries to buy votes at elections. They want to see proactive action on the part of the security agencies. And if you listen to the rhetoric, they've been very, very proactive in communicating with the public. However, the actions that we have seen it deserves more sort of proactiveness in nipping this in the bud. People want to see arrest. People want to see prosecution of these individuals that have been arrested, including those who are publicly known. Again, the actions taken by the IG to redeploy, the commissioner of police in Imo State is worth commending, but there are also other officials who have been considered recalcitrant that should requires action on the part of the security agency. So my sense is, yes, the rhetoric, great, but you need actions, and people want to see actions, and not just actions that are targeted at these perpetrators, but actions that are not, used as an instrument to clamp down on political opponents of incumbents.
Samson, again, talking about the rhetorics and some of the things, actions and inactions of the electoral umpire and those that are playing the political space speaks a lot to where we're headed to. I mean, the Electoral Act talks about certain offenses that there are certain things that you do and you would have committed an offense. And we see in the papers before these elections, the build up to this weekend's elections, we see where INEC is stalling in the prosecution of over 100 people have been seen to have or allegedly have broken the law in the course of the February 2023 general elections. But having said that, look at some of what we're getting in the papers today. Deployment of ICPC, for instance, personnel to ensure, say, to prevent vote buying. These are things that we've heard of before. We've heard this kind of deployment. We've heard of deployment of policemen. And indeed, we've heard of the redeployment of certain officers of the police force just to prevent certain things from happening. But then we still get there, and these same things tend to happen over and over again. At what point do we say, okay, we've had enough and this will end? How do we get to that point?
Well, the culture of impunity is quite pervasive, and it permeates every aspect of our electoral life. And it's just politicians who believe strongly that there's no consequence for deviant political behavior. And you have institutions that should hold and regulate political conduct fail in their responsibility to do so. And why? Because these institutions have been captured. Because loyalty to the Constitution isn't the guiding philosophy for how we manage state affairs. It's loyalty to an individual, it's loyalty to a political party. And that's a paradigm that we need, to change. Secondly, you can't have democratic elections without consequence, without enforcing the rules. The current Electoral Act clearly prescribes those rules. But what are the key issues? You need an independent judiciary to prosecute these individuals. Is the Nigerian judiciary independent as of today? Does it have, the courage to deliver justice? I think that's a question, for public debate. But if you look at what data tells us, is that the confidence in the judiciary is low. And that actually goes down to our management, not just of electoral adjudication or election cases, but also our criminal justice system. And that needs some measure of reforms. That people who violate the law need to be prosecuted diligently. Secondly, the institution responsible for prosecuting, this behavior, like INEC, is overburdened. And this is why there is need to create an electoral offenses commission. But creating an electoral offenses commission is not a silver bullet, because it still requires prosecution of those people who are considered electoral offenders. So you still need an independent judiciary to prosecute those people.
Something, if I may come in here, that when you talk about the Electoral Offences Commission, again, the question will be, who would populate that commission? Where would they be coming from? Brings up this other side of the question I wanted to ask. We keep talking about is the political players. What about the people? What about the electorate? At what point do we say, okay, you, the electorate, is not just enough that you have a vote to cast, but the build up to that election also, you have a role to play in what goes on at the elections and how the politicians carry on with their life?
I think, Neta, we need to decouple this conversation. Where there is a role for citizens, and that's where I was going to land. But state institutions have been created to serve the people, and so they must discharge their mandates because they are state institutions. And if you're unable to discharge your mandate, just pack your bags and leave that institution and let individuals who have the courage, who have the dignity and the respect for the rule of law man those institutions. And so when you say who are those who will constitute these commissions, as you know, in the 9th National Assembly, both the Senate did pass the Electoral Offences Commission bill, awaiting, concurrence from the House. The House undertook its own process. But there are certain latent gaps in that particular legislation. But now the 10th National Assembly has prioritized the Electoral Offences Commission. What will be composed of this institution? There are proposals that you have retired judges, you have representatives from security agencies, including the ICPC and EFCC. You also have representatives of civil society organizations. Yes, I think that now that the 10th Assembly is going to commence this process of reform, these are conversations we should have. But at the heart of this, and dealing with the question about vote buying, is the role that governance plays. This weaponization of poverty needs to be reversed. On the part of society, I think that voters need to note that, yes, your social conditions may be poor, they may be bad, but by selling your vote isn't the best sustainable solution to solving or improving your social conditions. And that's one message that needs to permeate every aspect of our society. The second is this participation and our attitude towards politics and governance, that elections does not start, or democracy does not start and end with elections, that you have a role to play even post-elections, holding government to account to deliver on the promise of lifting people out of poverty, of providing security. So that engagement across the entire electoral cycle is some level of education and political socialization that people do need, because, yes, as you have an opportunity to vote in Saturday's election, what will be the choices that you'll be making? Are those choices going to be based on your immediate social conditions, or you're interested in your future? And this is where people, who have not demonstrated respect for the rule of law, people who do not have a clear blueprint on how to address and improve your social condition or how to secure you, people who are only interested in violent rhetoric, deploying thugs, and undermining, the rule of law, do not deserve your vote. When you go out to vote tomorrow, look for individuals and parties that you are confident have the capacity to provide accountable, transparent, and transformative leadership. Those are the only people that deserve your vote. But if you sell your vote to these individuals who do nothing but just buy votes, they're going to buy your voices, and you will not have the right and even the moral ground, and as lawyers will say, the locus, to question them after this election.
All right. Just hand it to Ayo. I think Ayo has a couple of questions for you. Ayo.
Well, thank you, Nyota. I'll come back to you, Mr. Itudo, on some of those comments talking about our political culture. But let me quickly get to you in our Abuja studio, Dr. Tamunosaki Jack. Let's talk about readiness. We know the INEC chairman put up a statement recently, it was yesterday, it's still in the news, of how they say that election is a multi-stakeholder activity, and consequently is not something INEC alone can do. So, but INEC definitely has a critical role to play. I want to ask you, first of all, do you think INEC is ready? We have also heard from security agencies, and they have put out some statements, issued stern warnings, DSS, the military, the DHQ in particular. Do you think security agencies are ready? And then, do you also think the voters themselves are ready? 3 critical stakeholders in this election: INEC, security agencies, the voters. Do you think they are ready for this election? Dr. Tamunosaki,
okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
So, with regards to preparedness, INEC said they are ready, and of course we would want to hold them accountable to their words. So it's an off-cycle election, so the burden on INEC is lesser than compared to the general elections when we had so many glitches, logistics glitches, and late arrival of materials to polling units, and also with regards to the functionality of the beavers and upload of results to the IREV, especially during the presidential election. So we may not be able to categorically pass a judgment on INEC yet when they've not written the test or the exams. So by tomorrow morning, as the election kicks off, then we can now look back to the preparedness level and start making some conclusions. But like I said earlier, the confidence that the voters have on INEC and the security institution is low. So it should be an opportunity for INEC to regain some level of confidence from the voters. Then with regards to the security apparatus and security architecture, with all the deployments the police and the military have made so far, we hope that this could mitigate the risk of political violence on election day. But my worry is the proliferation of non-state actors, armed groups in these states, especially in Imo State and Bayelsa State, and even in Kogi State, where political actors have armed groups that are loyal to them, and are threatening political violence. So, in as much as the police and the military are trying to gather information regarding this risk, it's their actual ability to mitigate this risk at the polling centers. And this also brings me to the recent declaration by the INEC chairman as a means of mitigating violence, that polling units that will be violent reading, results from those polling units will be invalidated. And for us, we think that these may be counterproductive. Reason being that politicians and political actors could, engender selective violence in polling units where they know they don't have the strength to win. So if I know I don't have the strength to win in polling unit A, a politician would want to cause rancor and violence just to invalidate the votes of his opponents. So this could also be counterproductive and further, increase the level of volatility in some certain quarters. And with regards to the electorate, which should be coming out to vote tomorrow, the electorate, I would say, our worry is voter apathy, because the general elections in February, it's debatable, but most observers were not satisfied with the outcome and the conduct of the elections. Like I already mentioned, glitches with technology, and inability to upload the polling unit results to the IREV and all that. So this may likely affect the voter turnout. The last election, voter turnout was about 25, 26, 27% on the average. So we hope that this backdrop of the February elections do not deter voters from coming out with regards to the loss of confidence in the institutions, that's INEC and the security context within which the elections are to be held.
Well, let me come to you, Mr. Itodo. some of the comments that you made the other time bordered on what one can say is our political culture. Because I'm looking at study.com now, defining political culture as a historically based, widely shared systems, feelings, and values about the nature of political systems, which can serve as a link between citizens and government. So, in the light of that, and something that we have often known in our elections, people vote, politicians react, rhetorics follow. Next thing you know, people believe what the rhetorics that are coming out for their so-called leaders are, and then, of course, they go to the judiciary. Whatever comes out of it, there will be comments back and forth. And people tend to believe more of the negative as opposed to the positive. If this is our current political culture, how is that going to change if we continue to do the same thing? How will we change what we do in relation to this political culture so that Nigeria can win at the end of the day and not just politicians?
No, I think the point you made, Nigeria, it's important. And when we say Nigeria wins, it means three things. One, that the will of the people expressed through the ballot is respected by political actors and by our institutions. And there's no attempt whatsoever to subvert the process or substitute people's preferences for individual preoccupations. So I think that's really critical. That's only when we can say Nigeria has won. The second bit is the fact that collectively, our institutions have a responsibility to rise to the occasion. And when institutions, when institutions act in a manner that projects them as serving the interest of a certain segment of our political class and not public interest, because even the Constitution is very clear, and the 1999 Constitution is very clear about, the overriding public interest that should guide how institutions work. And so when security agencies, election management bodies, who are major stakeholders in this process, do not defend the Constitution, instead they act in a way that seeks to serve a particular individualistic interest, it hurts the emergence of Nigeria's victory. And in this case, when you say Nigeria wins, so our institutions have a critical role to play. The third bit deals with the role that citizens play and what is our own collective commitment, to democratic values. And this is the point about, turnout at elections. And why are we recording, low turnout at elections?
Just one moment, Mr. Soto. We'll step up on that, right now, because that's, in my opinion, that's the biggest, the most critical institution in this whole thing that you're talking about. But we need to take a quick feedback from, Chamberlain in Abuja. Our colleague is on standby right now to give us some updates. Chamberlain.
Well, yes, indeed. So we do have coverage for Bayelsa, Kogi, and Imo elections, but our correspondent in Kogi, remember, lots of build-up for tomorrow, in Kogi particularly, where some of the candidates too have spoken about the security presence, the apprehension, and what they expect of security. So Larry Lasisi joins now to just talk to us about how he scanned the area, who are the observers there, what's going on in terms of the environment. Hello, Larry.
Good morning, Chamberlain. Yes, we are in Lokoja, Kogi State, on ground for the election, the off-cycle governorship election coming up here tomorrow. I can give you a little brief. Kogi State, we have 21 local governments. We have over 1.9 registered voters. We have 18 registered parties sponsoring candidates for the election. And we're really, really looking forward to this election going peacefully and coming out credible. I can tell you for a fact that we've spoken to the resident electoral commissioner, and what he told our team is that he's ready. Arrangements have been made. Over a month ago, we had non-sensitive materials deployed to the local governments, to the wards. Yesterday, we also had the issue of inspection of sensitive materials, and that was done and that was deployed. Now, to give a little insight, I have a guest here with me, Hamza, that is the chief executive of Code, Connected Development, to give us a little highlight. Yesterday, you were at the inspection of the materials. Can you tell us how that went?
Oh, thank you for having me, Larry. Yesterday by 9 a.m., my team and I arrived in Lokoja. But before that time, a week ago, we've deployed to Imo State, Bayelsa, and Kogi State. I first headed to the Central Bank of Nigeria. I was received by the resident electoral commissioner. We inspected jointly security agencies, other INEC resident electoral commissioners. By the way, we have 8 resident electoral commissioners and 1 national commissioner on ground. We all inspected it. Those sensitive materials, it was sorted and deployed to various rack centers, accompanied by security agencies. So as I speak to you, all the sensitive materials in Kogi State are in various local governments across the state.
Okay, can you tell us from your own point of view, when we talk about security, you know the concern here is the issue of security, voter turnout. What's your feeling? What you feeling?
Larry, there's no cause for alarm. Yesterday, I visited 4 local governments to assess in real time by myself. I met with my team on the ground, and as we travel across this local government, we can see very armed personnel on the road, mounting roadblocks and checkpoints. In various INEC facilities, you have enough armed personnel, and this is joined by civil defense, the Nigerian Army, the Nigerian Police, the Department of State Services. They are very much on ground, and there's no cause for alarm. I even interfaced with different groups, particularly women groups, to getting the vote out and ensuring that they have felt a sense of protection of life and property, and they all commended that they were going to come out in mass and cast their ballot. So for now, there's no cause for alarm because the IGP, the National Security Advisor, have put actions to the words they made to the Nigerian people.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So there we have it, a perspective from the civil society. But this also tallies with what we're feeling on ground. Atmosphere is calm. Basically, a lot of people are just waiting for tomorrow, expecting that the Independent National Electoral Commission has put in place everything that needs to be done to ensure that the elections start on time and the operation moves, the process moves seamlessly. Chamberlain.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Larry. So, Dr. Jack, you heard it there. So I'm just wondering if your analysis center factored in some of these perspectives here, because if he said, or they see that the IGP and the NSA appear to have put action to the words that they've been talking about, that so it appears to be calm at the moment, one will expect that this should not be the calm before the storm. If it's calm today, tomorrow, naturally, or well, hopefully, should be the same. Did you perceive that kind of scenario in your analysis?
Yeah, sure. Like I mentioned earlier, the off-cycle election, so the pressure and the scope of the activities is lesser, compared to the general elections where election is holding across the country. So we actually expected these kind of interventions to come from the security operatives. But the question still remains, on election day, we can't tell if this tempo is going to be maintained or it's going to escalate. But with the nature the key political actors across these states. And like Samson Itodo mentioned, the political culture, which is violence, so to speak, may still likely play out. So we would want to call on the security agencies not to lose down the guard, but also to further intensify their activities, to mitigate these risks election day tomorrow.
I don't know, again, in your analysis of this build-up to these elections and other elections, one would wonder why we need, first of all, there's usually one resident electoral commissioner in a state. But for Kogi, for instance, there are 8 resident electoral commissioners there. Why do we need 8 resident electoral commissioners?
So like I earlier mentioned, the fallout of the general elections, INEC has lost some sort of confidence from the people. So it's about credibility concern. So INEC would want to ordinarily put in place measures, to ensure that the elections are transparent and credible. So it could be a scorecard for them to redeem their image.
Let's see if Samson could weigh in on this. Samson, 8 resident electoral commissioners in one state alone. And I mean, Dr. Jack has said maybe INEC is trying to regain trust from the people. Is that a guarantee?
It's not a guarantee, but it's not the first time INEC is deploying resident electoral commissioners to off-cycle elections. In fact, it's part of practice to deploy resident electoral commissioners to the states. But in this particular instance, yes, it's just the number and the scale. And the goal is, yes, it facilitates peer learning, but more importantly, it's also an oversight mechanism, but also sort of support to the resident electoral commissioners in the 3 states. My sense is, and perhaps our sense is, if you have 2 national commissioners, you have 9 other resident electoral commissioners, it strengthens the oversight. And in this case, where there are challenges, and this is where INEC needs to pay close attention. The first relates to issues around resolving issues that emanate from logistics preparations or logistics deployments, that where there are challenges, across the different senatorial districts and local governments, because each resident electoral commissioner has supervisory role to cover a certain number of local governments, that they are able to resolve, those logistical issues, because as resident electoral commissioner, even though they are not responsible for the state, but INEC has delegated powers to them, so they can exert some level of authority. But also, given that they are coming from other states, it is presumed that they will be unaligned, they will be detached, and they will be impartial in the management of the election in that particular state. The second, it's about supervising the local government collation officers for those states. Because we know that the weakest link in our election results management value chain is the collation, both at ward, it used to be ward, but now even local government, even in the states. And so these resident electoral commissioners will need to keep an eye on the collation officers, hoping that INEC mobilized, trained, and deployed individuals with impeccable integrity, and they are also impartial. And thirdly, why I think that this is equally important is in the aspect of public engagement, communicating with the public about the challenges, about the gaps, about actions that INEC is taking to respond to those challenges. Yes, tomorrow's polls, there will be challenges. There's never been any election without any form of challenges. But it's also about how INEC promptly responds to the challenges, but also communicates to the members of the public. And with this retinue of resident electoral commissioners and national commissioners, we expect that the operational shortcomings in the presidential and governorship elections will be a thing of the past. I'm hoping that that will be the reality tomorrow when voters go out, to cast their vote. But more importantly, INEC, our security agencies, and the president will be undergoing 3 tests tomorrow. The first test is a test of the commitment to restoring public confidence in the electoral process. And these institutions have a fundamental role to play in restoring public confidence in, in citizens' confidence in the electoral process. The second test is the integrity test, that whether in the management of this election tomorrow, that the integrity quotient of our elections will be enhanced. And it's about not just deployment, management of results or uploading results or the functionality of the beavers. And I think the third major test that these institutions will embark upon is a commitment to democracy and our electoral democracy, and how, the respect for the will of the people, the acknowledgement that voters are the kingmakers when it comes to elections, and respecting that will and not making or engaging in any act that seeks to undermine public choice will be a major test. And I hope that they pass this test tomorrow and the days ahead.
Isn't that in itself an admission that, or rather a suggestion, that even the political class do not trust the system? Isn't it a proof of sorts that they themselves, if they have to do anything extra to win at all costs, to intervene, to help themselves in the electoral process, isn't that an admission on their own part as well, that they do not trust the system to give them justice, but that whether they win or they lose, those who win celebrate, those who lose go to court almost all the time, especially for gubernatorial and presidential elections? Isn't that an admission that on their own part, the political class don't trust the system?
I don't think that's the case. I think fundamentally, it's about the attitude of the politicians towards politics. And my colleague in the studio makes a very salient point. Now, what is the mindset of a Nigerian politician? Most politicians think that they can subvert any system to do what? To secure political power at all costs. Is that do or die nature of our politics? So you see, legislations are being improved on an annual basis, on a yearly basis. We're reviewing our electoral laws. Why? Because we want to regulate political conduct. We want to regulate, the conduct of elections so it confers integrity. The systems are there, but they believe that they can subvert the system at all costs. That's why they make attempts at every point in time, to undermine the process. It's not really a lack of faith in the systems, but when laws are being made, when INEC introduces reforms to enhance the credibility of the process, our politicians, some of them, are devising ways to undermine and subvert the process.
It goes back to what I said.
And I often say this, let me conclude, that if our politicians will deploy their creativity, their innovation and genuity in the way they prepare to undermine elections, if they deploy that same intellect and innovation in public governance, trust me, Nigeria would not be where it is today.
It goes back to the same issue, Mr. Itodo. If they trusted the system that win or lose, they benefit. Win or lose, Nigeria wins. If they deployed that trust in the system, that no matter what happens, they believe that Nigeria wins, then it is, better for all of us. But there was something we were talking about before we went to Kogi the other time, about the most critical institution, the office of the citizen. How prestigious is this office these days? Particularly when you look at the way the institutions, the instruments of state are deployed for or against in most cases. On the one hand, the politicians are saying they want to serve the people, but a good number of people will say, well, the people they want to serve are, first of all, the ones they see in the mirror. how prestigious is the office of the citizen? How has it been whittled down? And how do we strengthen the office of the citizen, which also doubles as the office of the electorate?
Well, the words on the street is that Nigerians are in a very abusive relationship with the state, with their country. And the reason is not far-fetched, that the rights of citizens are not respected, that when public officers are making decisions, they do not consult with the people. They do not deliver on their campaign promises. That justice is not for all. Justice is for those who can afford it. And so the average Nigerian who does not have, access to state power or access, to any individual who is a repository of state power, or because they belong to the lower economic class, they do not have a right. And so that abusive relationship accounts for this level of distrust. But government also needs to note that governments across the world cannot succeed without public trust. And you have to build trust on the part of citizens. And how do you build trust? One is openness and transparency. How many institutions, how many public leaders are transparent with their people? How many of them consult with their people? And consultation is not going to speak, it's not holding town halls. It's not about that. It's more than that. It's what are your decisions a reflection of the preferences of the people? But to the voters, do we also hold our leaders to account? Yes. It is challenging to access our leaders sometimes. It's because we give them some, or we cut them some slack often. You have a right to put your leaders under pressure to deliver to you because they are your employees. If you don't vote for them, and that's in cases where votes count, if you don't vote for them, you would have terrible leaders emerge. And so now that people are going into elections and post-elections, they are making campaign promises. What happens after elections? Are you going to ask them questions about how they've delivered on, one, the economy, on budget, on education? Do you even have access, to the Constitution, to the Electoral Act? Because it begins with political education. And I think every Nigerian, should have a copy of the Constitution because it's an embodiment of your rights, your duties, and also deepens your understanding about how government powers are distributed between different arms and institutions of government. But also that in that institution, in that Constitution, there's also opportunities for you to recall and punish public leaders that you've elected who are not serving your interest, whether through recalls. And some would say, have we had any successful recalls in our democratic life? The answer is not far-fetched, but I really think that we got to a point where in one of the states, there was an attempt to recall a legislator. And we need to educate citizens to the point that when they vote at elections and they vote for leaders and they don't perform, you can do what? You can hold them to account, initiate a process of recall. If it's an executive position and the executive isn't performing, use the instrument of the legislature to hold them to account. But also note that you also have representatives at the local government level who you should hold to account, that there's a contract between you as a voter and the person who you have elected. You've given them powers to make decisions. They hold that power in trust for you. So they are accountable to you. They are accountable to you because they can't be in that position if you don't vote them. That's why participating in election is critical. Politics determines your life. It determines everything. And we can't afford to stay away from polling units because we think our votes will not count. Votes are counting in Nigeria's elections compared to where we were 10 or 15 years ago. And we make it difficult for people to read when we show up in large numbers to vote at elections.
All right, so just one more thing before we go, Dr. Jack. Several people have talked about INEC, security agencies, politicians, and they think all these groups have failed them at one point in time or the other. We have amended the laws, we've time and again done several things, and we're still grappling with a number of challenges. So some have suggested, perhaps, if we address this winner-takes-all approach to our election, the zero-sumness, do you think it will reduce all of this die-hard attitude and everything going this way?
Yeah, so of course, politics, it's a zero-sum game everywhere. Winner takes all. The kinds of political environments.
Yeah, I mean, if we have a parliamentary system, proportional representation, so that not, because they say, look, we spend a lot of money, and so if we lose election, we lose everything. So if there's proportional representation, they really lose anything, they'll have something to. So it might not be as violent, maybe. Who knows?
So I'll look at it from this perspective. I don't think if it's about the style of government we run, if it's parliamentary or if it's presidential, it's about the political culture that we operate in the country. So in as much as politics is seen as a means or an instrument to get into government and distribute state resources. So be it parliamentary government, presidential system of government, at the end of the day, politics about allocation of state resources.
All right.
These individuals will still allocate these resources.
So tomorrow, the political culture will be put to test again in the country in 3 states, Bayelsa, Kogi, and Imo. So how will it stand? We will all see all of that. Dr. Jackson Tamonosaki Jack, CDD Election Analysis Center, and also Samson Itodo, Executive Director, Yiaga. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today on the program.
Thank you.
All right, we will be back in a moment. Don't go away.
The Redeemed Christian Church of God, Northern Regions, Abuja Family presents the 22nd Abuja Special Holy Ghost Service. Theme, Ebenezer. Date, Thursday 9th and Friday 10th November 2023. Time, 4 p.m. daily. Venue, Redemption Camp. Kilometer 23, Outer Gurugu Village, Abuja Kefi Expressway, Nasarawa State. Ministering our Father in the Lord, the General Overseer of the Redeemed Christian Church of God, Pastor Enoch Adejari Adiboye, and other anointed ministers of God. Invite your friends, families, and even your enemies to partake in this special program featuring deliverance, healing, restoration, worship, word, prayers, and drama. As you come, joy shall replace your sadness.
Heartburn and indigestion? Try Just Eat. My recommendation for the past 26 years, Just Eat. Reliable remedy for heartburn, indigestion, flatulence, and acidity.
To give the confidence that only comes from knowing you are fully sorted. To show up for you just when you need a hand. And when retirement comes with all its worries and storms, to ensure we will stand by you and give you the coverage that you deserve. Make the perfect choice. Choose PAL Pensions today.
PAL Pensions, your pal for life.
All right, welcome back. So, Lalu, thank you for coming on again today. I mean, were you able to vote at all while you were in office? I wonder sometimes.
Yeah, well, I did register, but because I had to be with my principal at election times, I couldn't go back to my base to vote. But I voted before in the past. I voted in 1993, the June 12 election. So, yeah.
Just like us, I mean, we're always here most times. So it's sometimes challenging if you're on duty to go out there and vote. So who knows, at some point, probably early voting, if they amend the laws as Wiz reports are suggested, so that other persons who are out there can also go in and participate. But we've been talking about how to ensure that we have improved elections, such that the sanctity, the seriousness, when people go out there to vote, it should count for something. Not when, at the end of the day, when they go out there and vote, at some point, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in parentheses, because if it's based on violence, it could be cancelled in that area. If it's based on technicalities, if it's in court, and they don't get to look at the substantive matter of the matter, who knows? They could equally view it at that. So, and then came the last bit of the questioning with the previous guest about the zero-sumness of our politics, something that may be one of the causative factors to the violence, how they strive to make sure they get in there, because if they spend all that amount of money, they want to get something back. They consider it a business. So maybe let me start from there with you. Will it have an impact if we address that narrative? And if we're to address it, how should we progress with it?
All right, thank you. So I mean, listening to the discussion and also, being around in this country to see the level of our political awareness, there are three things that I think are important. The first one is that the motivation, that gets into politics, and then there's the second one that I call the level of disengagement, very wide level of disengagement. And of course, the third thing is reform. Let me take it from the first one, which is the motivation, to your question. Now, why do people go into politics? Why do people seek elective offices in our country? Is it because they want to serve? Really, for the most part. And I'm not saying this, it's not a blanket point. There are people who seek politics to serve. Now, but for the most part, if we ask ourselves, those who seek elective political offices, do they go there to want to serve, or for the sake of power, or for the sake of some other personal aggrandizement? Now, I don't think it's difficult to answer that question, because for the most part, we see, like you said, it's a zero-sum game. The kind of demonstration and the use that public office has been used for, I mean, what people have turned it into, shows us clearly that there's something even wrong with the motivation for people to get into political offices. And that's why some people have suggested in the past that, look, maybe we need to make political office, elected office, less attractive.
The question is how?
So, for instance, you can start with part-time engagements at certain levels. And we've done it before in this country.
Who will pass the law?
So the people
that have just got those jeeps.
So that's why I made those 3 points. That there are 3 things. So you're talking about reform. What are the reforms that have to take place? Because there's a wide level of disengagement. To my second point, people are not involved in this at all. There's a dismal level of participation, in our political life, and it's a sorry case, because politics controls everything. It controls the economy, it controls society, it controls essentially everything. But there is a dismal level of disengagement. People are not engaged, and Nigerians could be very.
Clarify the people here.
Yeah. Well, generally, because if you look at the numbers, come on, it's just a joke. We are really, wherever we are, we haven't really gotten ourselves together as a people to understand the significance of political power, and those that are benefiting from this dysfunction, they will never the people benefiting from the political dysfunction that we operate today as a country, they will never make any change. They are not, there's no incentive for them to make change. The change must come from outside. It must come from the people.
And that some would term it a revolution. And then those same people, hold on, if the change is going to come from the outside, if those who are playing that field are not ready to make a change and the change must come from the outside, who's going to bring that revolution up? Who's going to bring that change, and how would that change even happen?
So it's a tough situation. So I don't think there's going to be one silver bullet. But I think we have to discuss more seriously and engage the people in the question of reform. Like I was saying, it is possible in this country to have people in political offices not do full time. It's happened before.
Call them back.
Yeah. There are also those who believe, and I've also had that discussion today, had it in your previous segment, that look, a parliamentary system might bring more representation, might be cheaper, and might improve on the issue of accountability. Because those are some of the major problems that we are dealing with. Nigerians will rather sit out and have a very engaging discussion on election day than actually go out to vote. We have left the space to the kind of people, even, most of the people that vote. You find out that there are people that have been mobilized and paid money. Where are the educated people? Why are they not involved? Where are the elites?
If you take that a little further, because what you said, those who vote, people that could be, you spoke about the class.
Easily influenced, yeah.
And even those who emerge, many will say, not the best of us. So as you're asking, where are the educated ones? Because, it's still the middle class, if they still exist, and the upper class who will still determine and ensure that they drive the policies and narratives and get us to the path where we want. So if those two classes are disconnected, how far or close are we then from making the kind of change that we want?
Yeah, so I made the point that the people, we the people have to organize ourselves better, and it has to start from, people setting up wherever we are engaged, whether it's in school, whether it's in churches, whether it's in mosques, whether it's in our associations, whether it's in our clubs. People have to begin to speak out about what they want. We can't just be complaining about the outcomes when we are not active enough to demand the changes that we need. That's where it has to start. Because when we do that, let me tell you, I've been in government, at least for 8 years. If the people in government understand that the people outside are insisting on a point and they don't relent, I can guarantee you that if that attitude is maintained over a long period of time, across board, fairly, there will be changes. There will be changes. These people, the people in government, they are not gods. They are human beings. But if what they see is that, we can get on, we can get on with that. We can afford to ignore that because of the lack of people engagement. Then they will do whatever is possible.
There's a picture here now. It's clear. Not that picture. It's clear though that those in the higher socioeconomics, with higher socioeconomic status, are the ones who participate in, who tend to participate in politics. But,
not necessarily.
Hold on.
Because
I'm coming. But you see now, when they're at that point where they feel like they have everything they need, again, the elite, they're like, let them just carry on. And those who are below who are the certain socioeconomic status are like, I'm not interested in food on my table. The others are like, I'm just interested in survival. So is it a question of awareness or education? Because there's a difference between awareness and education, some will say. At what point do we balance out so that this need for people to get involved, to hold these other guys accountable, at what point do we balance out?
Well, I don't think I have the answer at what point does that happen. happen. But what I think has to happen is that the people has to be better organized. We, the people, have to be better organized. We must understand, and I guess that goes to awareness and education. We must understand that this is a democracy, okay? And that our voices must count. We must understand, the point about the right of a citizen. We must understand that we are governed by a constitution. We must understand that elected leaders are people that we put there. We must that level of conscientizing has to happen. It has to happen, and when that happens, the people that are in power, they will get this signal. Let me be very frank with you right now. The signals that the people in power get is that, look, when we get here, we do whatever we like. We are not compelled, because indeed, they're not compelled. You have, assemblies and representatives that don't even share sensibilities of the people. People go out and do audacious things. In these times when there is so much belt tightening in terms of resources, people have the audacity to allocate 166 million naira each for every legislator to get an SUV. People who don't really need it. So people are, the people in power, they are audacious because they know that whether as time goes, we forget it. They will leave the issue. They will move on. People need to understand that they must insist on issues. So, we shouldn't leave the protest, the expression of disgust. We shouldn't leave it to just the people who are, the lower, elite, informed people, educated people must get involved and provide leadership.
Does that then mean that the way things are, all of these questions or some policies, for instance, the student loan, the presidential, the Navy, who is getting that yacht against them? Sometimes they're confused on who's going to get it. And then you also have the subsidy removal, which states are grappling with. People wonder what becomes of all of those. So as things stand, it comes across as though you're suggesting, look, if the people don't push, they'll keep getting the short end of the stick. All of these seeming good policies notwithstanding.
Yeah, so good question there. So look at what happened with the students' loan and the yacht. Those people walk out against the idea of the yacht. The president had to come out and say, hey, I didn't ask for that. I didn't ask for no yacht, and got it removed. And then the people in the House of Reps, because people were talking about, oh, look, so you have 5 billion for student loan, you have the same 5 billion for the yacht. What's going on here? So what did they do? They now moved the 5 billion from the yacht, added it to the student's loan. That just tells you the power that the people have when they insist. And we must commend, we must commend the reps for doing that, and we must commend the president for coming out to say that, look, I didn't ask for no yacht.
They said it was the former president that paid for it.
Well,
were you aware of it at the time?
That is still being investigated. I don't have specific details.
So now that it's been delivered, is it going to be returned?
So the Senate has set up, I think they're going to look into what really happened. But my point, which we shouldn't miss, is that because the people kept pushing the matter, there was an outrage about the yacht. 5 billion for yacht, 5 billion for student loan. What's going on here? The people in power got the message, and now we have 10 billion naira for the loan, and the yacht is out. The president said, I didn't ask for the yacht. That's my point. We must conduct ourselves as the people in a democratic system, as the people that the power belongs to the people. But guess what? The people in power will not give you that narrative, and they may not encourage that. It is those of us that are outside government that must organize ourselves to push this thing. We are under a constitution.
There's something about 5 billion. 5 billion was also approved for states. Politics. Now, another 5 billion, no, not for you. I'm not saying it was allocated to you. I know you have questions for Lalu. Go ahead, please.
Well, we'll talk about the details of that money later. But a very quick follow-up to you, for you, Mr. Akande, on that. As you said, you've been in government, and you also tell us, because of your experience, you know how pressure can be added on, can be mounted to ensure that we get the kind of change or reactions from government that we want. So the question that I want to ask you in that regard is, how does that work? Because there are people always around the seat of power that want to influence a thing or two, such that in some cases they attempt to block the executive at whose table the buck stops from getting the realities of some of these things or from ensuring that he doesn't get this information. So how does that kind of pressure work? So Nigerians can be educated and be able to say, you know what, we want this done and we want it done our own way.
Well, that's true up to a point that the leaders and people in government, yes, it's possible that they could be shielded from the reality of what is happening outside. But let me say to you that if the people who elect their officials, if they become more vociferous, if they mount pressure on a consistent basis, and if they do it not as a partisan motivation, if we organize ourselves as a people around the interests that are common, even the leaders themselves will break the barriers or all the kinds of shields that are put in front of them, because they will then begin to understand that ultimately, the power comes from the people. So it goes on to what has to happen. There has to be a better organization of the people outside of government. Wherever we are, what are we preaching in the churches? What are the pastors preaching? What are the imams preaching? They must be preaching accountability. They must be pushing out the public interest on every issue, and their voices have to be raised. What is being discussed in our clubs, what is being discussed in the associations, whatever the associations are, there must be a concerted effort. And I mean, it's not as easy as I'm saying it, by the way, but look, this is where we have to start. There must be a concerted effort that we send strong signals to the people in government that, hey, this is not going to be business as usual. And it has to start from the citizens understanding that, look, as the citizen, I have certain powers conferred on me fundamentally and recognized by the Constitution.
Don't also forget the possibility, Mr. Konde, that in some cases when people push and push in the manner you are prescribing, that's been our experience before. Even now, we have a situation where when such rhetorics go out and government sees it, the natural reaction we get most of the time is a pushback, labeling everyone, particularly those who are speaking out, as opposition. In the previous government under which you served, well, maybe not directly, the minister of the day said the civil society organizations and the media have joined opposition. Now, we were called the opposition for doing our job, for, as you said, calling for accountability. If we find a situation, not just at the federal level, but even in the states, where in the case of Imo State, for instance, where Labour is calling for something and Labour is labeled as opposition. And I don't even know how many other states have such an experience. So in a situation where people are calling for good governance and they are labeled, what exactly do people do at the time? Who do we believe?
Yeah, Ayo, thank you very much. That's why I said that, it has to be relentless. And even while I served in government, there were several instances, when you had to, people in government had to defer to the people. I remember when Professor Oshibajo was acting president, and there was, I think it was a labor protest. He did put a call to the labor leaders that, hey, instead of you guys, protesting outside, come into the villa. He brought them into the villa. and had meetings with them in the villa. Look, the people that wants to call the government to order must understand that, first of all, if they are well organized, if they are relentless, ultimately, they will have their way. Yes, there will be pushback. There will be pushback by those who are benefiting and profiting from the current dysfunctional system entirely. They won't want to change it, and so they will call you names. You call a dog a bad name in order to hang it. That's why I said that we have to be relentless, and we are guided by the Constitution. We are guided by the law. There is what is called social justice. All of these things are already enshrined. What we need to do is to organize ourselves lawfully, organize ourselves properly, define the narratives, and come up with the solutions. It must start right now with a reform of our electoral system. And I believe that part of that reform might include looking at our political system. Do we really need a presidential system of government? It is too expensive, and it confers too much power that we have tried to do since 1979 to 83 and 99 up to now. It hasn't brought the transformation. Maybe we need to go back to parliamentary system of government, where, in fact, everybody is elected from their constituency, and the government of the day is more accountable.
All right.
It's compared to be transparent.
I guess
the president has to sit in the. Let me make this point, please. The president or whoever is the chief executive has to take questions on a weekly basis, publicly. That increases accountability and transparency. That is just one. There are many things that we need to fix in our electoral system, and people have articulated this. So we need to start demanding those changes.
Okay. Well, one last question that I'd like to ask you, and it goes back to the conversation you were having with my colleagues, with you right there in the studio. Now, it seems, I think it was a question that Chamberlain actually asked you, that a good number of cases that go to courts, they are more on technicalities and not on the voting process itself or the results of the elections. To you, does that suggest that we are getting better at our electoral process and that the votes are counting more as opposed to the technicalities which the politicians usually base their cases on? Because previously, in the early days of this Fourth Republic, it is the results that were always questioned. But now it's moved from just the results to technicalities. Does that suggest that our electoral process is getting a little better and that we only now need to begin to work on the technicalities?
Well, I'll say this, on lighter mood, but no less significant. And I think somebody made the point. Some of the lawyers have made this point themselves that, we've managed to endanger a political system that really, puts a lot of money in the pockets of the lawyers. I think there has been too much litigation of the political system. Too much has depended on what they call say. We have situations where people end up in political office not because they actually won the election, but because all kinds of technicalities and all kinds of legal mumbo-jumbo produced a result. So that is a problem. That is a problem, and I'm sure that some of the reforms that have been articulated and advocated can sort out the problem. It is important, to your point, that we have less of these cases, and more importantly, that we are able to even settle those legal issues, petitions, before power is transferred, before people are sworn in. Because look, once somebody has been sworn in, it's really just an uphill task trying to change all of that. So you are right. We need to have a situation where the determination of political outcomes, the political outcomes are determined more by what people do when they go to cast their ballot and what happens in the courts.
All right, all that. We appreciate your comment on this morning. Lalu Akonde, former presidential aide So let's take a look at some messages that come through today from Olagunju talking about election and participation. He says, State of the Nation shows a gap between the expectation and the reality, where it's far simpler for people to blame the Supreme Court for their involvement in the election than it is to take responsibility for coming out to vote and our contribution to the law that enables INEC. By continuously blaming the government, it takes away our responsibility, he says.
Well, there's this one by Dixon Eka. Dixon says, as the good people of Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi go to the polls to elect new governors tomorrow, both the actors and the followers should eschew violence and allow the wishes of the people to prevail, as only God chooses leaders. If you don't win today, you may win tomorrow. INEC and security agencies on their part must know that whoever wins becomes the boss, hence they must be neutral. May the wishes of the people of these states prevail tomorrow. Dixon. Right.
And I say amen. Everyone says amen. Festus Akimboyewa's tweet on X says, what Nigerians want in tomorrow's elections in Imo, Kogi, and Bayelsa are peaceful, credible, transparent, and fair elections. All contenders must put peace first so that voters in these states can come out and vote in an atmosphere of peace.
So peace we all want, don't we? Well, that is the show today. We'll see you next time. Don't forget to keep it here because we will bring you all the coverage for the elections. I'm Chamberlain Asaf. Goodbye.
And I'm Nel Taigwe. Remember, you do have your powers as a citizen. Use them well. Hold your leaders accountable, but within your own space. Be your own leader.
Have a wonderful day and a beautiful weekend ahead and successful elections. I'm Ayo Makinde. Bye for now.